The female of the species is more deadly than the male. That was a song, I think, from the 90s by a band called Spider. But it certainly gets us asking the question, is the female of the species really more powerful than the male? It was said back in antiquity, back in Lemuria, that the female were the magicians. And is that why we live in such a patriarchal world? While I've been researching the occult, I've actually made an observation that the majority of people talking about the occult are in fact men. And it got me asking further questions. Stay tuned to find out what those further questions are. Have you seen The Substance? It's actually a really good film. It's quite gruesome, so if you're predisposed to not really liking horror movies, I wouldn't recommend that you watch it, but I actually really enjoyed it. And the reason why I really enjoyed it was the message that I interpreted behind it. And it was the role of women and the pressure of women to remain young and beautiful in today's age. Now, I'll just give you a synopsis of the film. So Demi Moore is this actress. She's turned 50s, she's over 50, and she gets sacked from her regular job as a fitness instructor in Hollywood, and she is introduced to this I wouldn't even know what you call it, but basically she can inject herself and create a younger version of herself, which is born out of her. Now, I'm quite sure that there is a deeper occult meaning to this film, but I just want to talk about it today from the perspective of women and how women are viewed in today's society and the role of women in occultism. So I said to my mentor, I was having a bit of a laugh with him. I got on Zoom with him and I didn't have any makeup on and I didn't have the camera angle at a certain angle. And I said, I wouldn't dare go on YouTube looking like this. And I said, it's all right for you fellas. You can pretty much, and listen, this is a generalization here. It's not across the board because, as we know, there's no absolutes. So this is a generalization. So I said to him, I wouldn't go on YouTube looking like this. And there's this pressure for women to look presentable. I've watched men recording their videos and they've got in their cars and they've got the phone down there and you can see their big guts and you can see their double chins and they just don't give a shit. I feel it's very different for women. So that's one perspective, but thinking about the patriarchal society that we live in. Now, yes, I recognise there is a shift and the pressure that women have felt to look a certain way is morphing into or has morphed and been morphing that way for some time into men. And I'm not verbalizing that very well. Basically, men are feeling the same pressures to look a certain way, to have a certain physique. It's becoming common for men to have plastic surgery to stop the aging. You get what I'm saying. But generally, it's been and still is an area that's targeted for women. The beauty market is targeted at women predominantly. Women age and they become haggard, yet men age and they become more refined, more respected. It was actually said to me not long back that I'm no longer desirable because because of my age, because I'm no longer fertile. And of course, men can reproduce into old age, whereas women get to a certain age. So does that mean that once a woman reaches a certain age, she's done with, she's no longer useful to society? And that was actually depicted in the film, The Substance. And that is the patriarchal society that we currently live in. Now, I recognise there is a shift happening. We are going into a new age, and that age is more of a feminine age. And maybe this is why we've got masculinity being feminized. And again, there are other reasons why men are being feminized. And again, it's not for this video. Is it the separation of masculine and feminine to separate us further? Yada, yada, yada. Again, multi-layered and deep. But for today's video, I want to concentrate on my observation, and it's not peer-reviewed, and I've not done any deep studies in this. It's been an observation. So whilst I've been researching the occult, I'm noticing that it's very male-dominated. And when I started looking into the witchcraft, I noticed that was very female-dominated. And it got me thinking about occultists and alchemists of antiquity. And it's been, throughout the ages, predominantly men. You've got Hermes Trismegistus, you've got Agrippa, you've got Paracelsus, you've got John Dee, you've got Rudolf Steiner, you've got Carl Jung. And the only women that I can think about who were involved with occultism was Alice Bailey and her predecessor. What was her name? Oh my God, I'm going to have to put her name as a text because it's completely gone. But it seems that your most prominent occultists were men. And it got me thinking about the persecution of witches. And they were mainly women. Now again, I'm generalising. It wasn't absolute, it wasn't all women, it wasn't all men. But there is a predomination there. So when witches were persecuted, was it a persecution against witchcraft? Or was it a persecution against women? Something there to think about. Now, again, if we think about Freemasonry, it's only recent, and I think it was a lady called Annie Besant who worked introducing women into Freemasonry, but it's still predominantly men. There are still lodges out there that won't accept women. And in actual fact, when I used to live in a place called Skelmersdale, and I lived opposite a Labour club, and there were areas of that Labour club that women weren't allowed, and they weren't allowed to play pool, which I just thought was an abomination because, I was like, women's rights, and not that I've ever been a feminist, and, I never have been, but I want to be able to do the things that the men want to do. But yeah, so, and I know occultism back in the 1800s and maybe even before then, basically when Christianity started to take a hold and started to dictate what you were allowed to speak about, occultists did go underground. And they were practicing magic underground, and of course the witches didn't go underground, and maybe that's why they were persecuted. But it's just something to think about this patriarchal society that we do live in, and how, it's a new thing that women have been being paid the same as men, like equality. Now, I'm not saying that that's a good or a bad thing, because again, there has been this separation with the sexes, and Is that why relationships are so hard to have? Because the roles of men and women has been distorted in some way. You know, I myself, I know that I'm in my masculine energy a lot because I've got to be, because I live alone. You know, I haven't got a man to go out and get the wood for me when I want to put logs on the log burner. I've got all my own finances. I've got to provide for myself. You know, make sure I earn enough money. You know, and that's meant to be a man's job. Now, whether I agree with that or not, I don't know, because it has all been distorted, and I've been part of that distortion throughout, you know, because I've grown up in the society. But I just wanted to put that out there and give something for whoever views this to think about as regards to women in occultism. I think there's only one woman that I've actually come across who's studying you know, deep occultism, and that's a channel called Angela's Symposium. She's got something like 90,000 followers, but it is predominantly men from my observation.